Hi everyone, welcome to Reviewia Talks. Today we have a very interesting guest with us. Her name is Shweta Sharma, and she is working as a director in CBRE in the UK. Hi Shweta.
Hi, Arijit. Nice to be here. Nice to see you again virtually.
Likewise, likewise. So, for starters, I will let you introduce yourself to our viewers, and then we have a set of questions which we'll dive into.
Of course, very, very, very traditional introduction, or so to speak. Studied. I have a background in statistics. Did my graduation from Delhi University, and then went on to do my MBA from ICFI, Hyderabad. And tumbled into the commercial real estate sector space, so to speak. I still remember. I think when I was going in for the interview, I was still googling about what commercial real estate is. So it's very the entire trajectory, so to speak, or this entry into commercial real estate has been kind of as see how it goes scenario. So I spent about 6 years with CBRE in India, and then decided to take a break and try out my own venture, completely non-real estate related. Ran that for about a year, and then kind of still hadn't gotten enough of the startup space, so decided to kind of shift countries and explore what the UK startup scene was like. And I joined a company here called Hostmaker, and kind of leading their institutional real estate sales. Then after that, we again kind of looked at what else could we do, and therefore then kind of made a jump back to CBRE in the UK, in a different role. So yeah, so bit of a topsy turvy ride, but enjoying it so far.
Excellent. And as I said, it is great to have you on our show. So coming
Likewise.
to the first question, uh, it'll be fair to say, I think you would agree that it's sort of an unconventional profile that you have. Pertaining to women professionals, we don't see too many women professionals in the commercial real estate or real estate per se, and that too in sales. So how did that kind of come about? You told us that maybe commercial real estate happened by chance, but you stuck on, and we'll be very, very keen to understand from you how your journey has been.
Yeah, I think it's quite a funny one, I must say, but something that I've tremendously enjoyed. Uh, I think, as most of us, when I was studying, this whole concept of real estate in my mind only was, um, restricted to houses that we rent or houses that we have to buy. And any job associated with it was basically the Uncle G who used to drive that motorcycle and take us around and show us properties. So that was basically my remit or definition of what a real estate job can look like. Of course, when I came across companies like CBRE, which have been established over like 100 years, I realized that there's this whole world of real estate that um, people in their usual lives do not actually absorb. There's obviously the development side, which is of course the likes of DLF, and Lodha, etc., who actually build these buildings, and they make them ready for use, whether it is for houses, whether it's for offices, for malls. It's everywhere around us, and that's the ironic part. It's all over, all around us, but we don't really realize how much effort actually goes into this whole sort of chain of activity that happens. And then I went on to find out that there's also this big remit of institutional investors, or investment side of the business, as they call it, that actually pump in money to help these builders actually build these buildings. And in hindsight, to all of us, and I'm sure our audience here is far more aware than I was at that time, but it was just like like an eye opener for me, that there's this whole cohort of big banks like Goldman Sachs and BNP Paribas, who actually have real estate investment teams committed to actually building these blocks, so to speak, for of our cities and our towns. And then, of course, then finally, you also have your occupier space, which is essentially the term that we use in commercial real estate to classify people who actually are going to be using these spaces. When I say using these spaces, I mean, it seems like a far, far away, at least for me in the UK now, since I've not seen my office in a year. But essentially, it is people, big companies who actually use these spaces to house their employees and get work done. You have shops and retailers who actually create like these beautiful eclectic spaces where you can go and shop, and those essentially refer to the occupier. And fundamentally, across all of these three groups, you have companies like CBRE that sit and offer consulting services, be it in acquiring space, be it in building space, in investing space, in spaces, or trying to understand market trends to make business decisions. And really, the whole thing is driven from the fact that if you look at any company's P&L, the second most expensive line in that P&L is real estate, after salaries. And so, it was this new world that had kind of opened up, by chance. And I was essentially, because of my background in statistics, I had originally started my role as in the investment sales. So it really required dealing with a lot of private equity funds, who were actually entering India back in about 2010, and looking to actually invest in real estate and try and essentially help kind of model their investments and give them solutions on what's the right city to invest in, for example. Unfortunately, at that point, we had just come out of the financial crisis, and also India was a bit more insulated than the US, but it really impacted the kind of interest that had come in, as well as the capital that was flowing into the country. And so, as a result of that, the best part, I would say, about being in a situation like that was that you did whatever was thrown at you. You was hired for an investment profile, but you ended up kind of advising occupiers on, say Google, on how much space they needed, and you ended up kind of trying to understand what companies require, what occupiers require, from a real estate standpoint. So yeah, so that's essentially how the journey started, and so far continuing, I would say, in different kind of remits.
Great. So there's just an expansion to this question. So as I said, you've been someone who's sort of kind of have been breaking conventions. So was it a little overwhelming? Maybe probably you were the only female in these boardroom discussions or client meetings. How did that go for you?
Yeah, it's I was talking to somebody else a few weeks back, and and they kind of we were discussing a similar topic. And to be honest with you, when I entered the workforce, I felt I was very, very lucky to be in a group that did not really look at my role based on my gender. So my gender was a non was a point of no conversation, right? It was all about the work that I delivered and the kind of output that we were able to achieve for our clients. That said, I think now when I look back and I reflect, I mean, I tremendously enjoyed the environment I was in. It was sort of like it was chaotic. It was a very, very aggressive, and not aggressive in a bad way, but very challenging, I would say. We were hungry for business. We were passionate, and we did everything that we could to actually win business and secure our foothold in the market at that point. uh, I do wish, though, that I had some more senior leaders who were women that I could look up to, because I didn't know how that would look like. All my role models that I had at that point, and some of them I'm still in touch with, and have been in touch with throughout my career as I have moved from one place to another. They were all men, and fantastic men. Very supportive, very good at what they do, extremely conscious of advancing the agenda of diversity and inclusion within the businesses, and equal opportunity providers, basically, in the truest sense. But that said, they were fundamentally you know till the time that you don't actually see that sort of similar personality, similar sort of gender, I would say, for the lack of a better word, but that similarity, like advancing, I couldn't imagine myself actually being in that position, because I hadn't seen anybody that looked like me in that position. There were one or two, but not very many at that point. What I understand is, obviously, the situation has completely changed now, and there are far more women in the teams now, across all levels, and I think that was something that I missed the most. But when it came to work, I think the biggest part, or the big what I'm very thankful for, was that it was never gender was never an issue when it came to delivering work. I wasn't treated any differently. I wasn't subject to any so-called prejudice, which unfortunately a lot of women have to go through. But fortunately, I was in a very secure environment at that point. And the I would say that there was some very awkward conversations where I could see the men around me also kind of warming up to the idea of having a woman in the team. I remember we were going to kind of look at a under construction site that by this big developer who had organized like a huge lunch for us, and all the commercial real estate brokers were invited to actually like look at the property. And really, I mean, these were the activities that you do to try and generate interest from occupiers. And I remember walking into that under construction site in a pair of heels, and like the pencil heels, basically. And I was the only woman in that whole group, and everybody, I think, was that day just trying to like figure out a way that I could actually walk through the whole site without falling. Also, that I had a skirt on, and it was just it was really funny, because all of a sudden, the attention has moved from actually marketing the property to helping this one female colleague or a co-worker trying to navigate an under construction site in a pair of heels. So now when I look back, it was teamwork at the end of the day. But I think it was learning for a lot of my colleagues as well.
Interesting, very interesting. So moving to the next part of your career, where you became a startup entrepreneur. So we would like to hear a little about that, and your experience of how it was to be a female entrepreneur. Did you see that the startup ecosystem or the startup community looks towards female entrepreneurs any differently? We would want to know from you about that.
Absolutely. No, that was definitely one of the most exciting, adventurous things I've done. And I'll take a step back and try and give the viewers a bit of flavor about why I took that decision. And Arijit, you and I have been closely working and talking around that time, because of a mutual vested interest in the startup space and entrepreneurship. um, and it was looking at people like you and various other sort of friends who were really kind of riding that wave of startups back in 2015-16. It was always something that I wanted to do. It was in my heart to actually like step out and look at what I could do on my own, building a brand. And so it was kind of like this motivation that I had in intrinsically, which I kind of kept it to the side burner while I was working, because I feel that having a little bit of work experience, and of course you have examples of entrepreneurs who have jumped straight into their businesses and have achieved great heights, Oyo being one of them. um, but I feel for the average man or a woman, it's important to acquire that experience, working for someone else and in an environment where you have to collaborate and you have to work as a team before you actually step into that journey of your own. And because of broadly a lot of fundamental lessons that you learn in terms of discipline, in terms of being developing that commercial acumen, and client relationships and stakeholder management, all that kind of stuff. So I'd been with CBRE about 6 years, and the thing that really kept me interested in the role was that I was doing like very different things. So I started from investments, went into a commercial brokerage, which was commercial sales, then kind of moved into account management, where I kind of led the relationships for global clients, from an India standpoint. And that was the point where I was feeling, okay, my learning curve is becoming a little less steeper. And so I wanted to try something. And that's when the whole idea of Skia happened. And my co-founder and I, we decided to kind of launch into this exciting world of content and online content, and generating a community around important conversations for women, and starting with something as simple as how do you maintain a kajal while riding in a hot metro, and stuff like that. And it was a lot of fun because I felt that the startup fraternity, again, to my pleasure, is actually very gender agnostic as well. And it's all about your output, and people are very, very there is in fact a lot of impetus on inviting female founders to come and join this whole fraternity, just from the point of view of the kind of diversity that a female founder will bring to this thinking. um, I wouldn't say it's completely completely devoid of any discrimination. I know for a fact, and I won't name names, but I know that there are instances where couples who are married and who are running the startups are, I would say, the man, or the male partner is not so much under scrutiny as the woman, because there's that regressive tendency of assuming that, oh, they might start a family, or she might fight. And notice how all of these are like kind of directed at the women. So I mean, those prejudices definitely exist. The other thing is, I think, which is also very, you can see it not just in the startup world but across or like all corporations, is that the moment you have a female leader who is very strong, has a bold voice, and is very stern, the picturization of those leaders is almost reduced to a monster. There's that the famous Anne Hathaway movie, Meryl Streep movie, Devil Wears Prada. I mean, the name itself, I mean, if you look at Meryl Streep's role, I mean, she is a powerful woman doing her job and expecting everybody to do a good job. But her, image has been reduced to this like monster who's gone through 4 divorces and, is like just Cruella de Vil. So somehow, and that's probably an exaggeration when we see it in a movie. But at some form, it's always there in the back of minds of all people. So you could see, you still have those kind of instances. But to be fair to and to the particularly to the Indian ecosystem, which I was a part of, I think very, very supportive, very encouraging, and really welcoming of female founders.
Great, great. So the next question is, now as a professional, who's been in the real estate industry, you've had the privilege of working in two geographies, one being India, the other now you're in the UK. So what contextual differences do you see in working in the same industry but in two different geographies?
Yeah, really, really interesting question. And I could go on about this. But I think first and foremost, there's a big cultural difference. And you can sense that when just in the way people engage with each other. I feel that one of the, and because I've had experience in sales in India as well as in the UK to some extent, there is a very different way of approaching people, engaging with people, and partnering with people for the right solutions. And it's all to do with the culture. So, for example, what would be considered as inviting in India, or having a cup of coffee, when you are looking to kind of kick off a partnership, um, and just kind of sharing some personal moments, and building that relationship may not be the right approach in an environment like the UK, maybe because the appreciation for being efficient with your time is really valued. So you could be closing transactions on the phone and over email, as opposed to my experience in India, where that face-to-face conversation is so critical to actually like sealing the deal. So there are a lot of cultural nuances. I would say the biggest difference that I find is actually the way people work, and that is basically being very respectful of people's private time versus the office time. I remember, I think in India, it used to be. I don't remember working straight for 5-6 hours without a break in between, in the sense like having a cup of tea, or just catching up with other colleagues, or just kind of having that kind of informal time, which I after 1 year of remote working, I really miss that now, and I want to go back to it. But I would see that it's completely opposite in the UK, where people were extremely sharp to come in. They start their day early. In fact, most breakfasts and lunches would be on the table, but they would be extremely efficient throughout the day. But they will leave at on time, and the reason for that is because there are childcare commitments. Children maybe in the nurseries, and they need to be picked up at 5, and between 5 and 7 they need to be given food, and like put to bed and read. They need to be read like bedtime stories. So there's a very strict environment of respecting people's lives outside work as well, and also a bit of self discipline in terms of making a full use of the day. It works for people here. I think the Indian way of doing things is something that I really enjoy, sometimes occasionally miss as well. But it's not, I would say that it's not a badge of honor to stay late at work. It's not considered a big achievement if you have been working till 10 o'clock in the night. And it's not something that people want to do. In fact, it is potentially frowned upon, because it means that you are not being efficient with your time, or you are probably overburdened, and you really need to have a conversation with your manager about your workload.
Right. Very interesting. Okay. So, final question for today. In fact, last but one, not the final one. Uh, so very recently, you've moved roles internally, right? Now you're moving to something. While you are a statistics graduate, but maybe it's been a while that you've been in touch with data and analytics, but that's your new
Yeah,
role, right? You're
yeah,
moving as the
yeah.
director.
No, yeah. I mean, it's quite an interesting transition, actually. I'm very excited about it. But it really is. I would say, before I come into the role, I think it's important for all of us to realize that, our world has changed in the last 12 months. We all know that, right? And one of the most directly impacted industries has been real estate, because the way people use spaces has fundamentally changed. Offices are being looked at differently. I mean, I think everybody agrees that remote working 100% is not, it's not useful, but also it's about the purpose that an office serves versus maybe a spare room in your house, or just going to a coffee shop, or like a serviced office. And there are so many questions that kind of lead us to believe that we're almost at an inflection point as an industry. There was that big wave of service office where you actually like cut a floor plate in a building and you give it to smaller clients. That was about a decade back, like the biggest thing that was happening in real estate. But actually, largely you've seen that the industry has not been very, I would say that, or for the because of the type of the industry that it is, like there's not too much innovation that has happened, particularly from a technology perspective. Of course, there's been a lot of development around making business processes more efficient, etc. But it's not been at that level that you see some of these big giants kind of taking big leaps from an AI standpoint as well. And so big companies within real estate operating, whether it is consulting services, developers, investors, everybody's really thinking about what is the next thing that our clients want or need, or how do we make ourselves like ready for this new world of or this new transformation that's kind of overtaking this whole industry, and for that matter, like across industries. And I think it's common knowledge to see that the role of data is going to be tremendous, and it's a no-brainer, that that is essentially going to be the new fuel going forward. How we use data to make lives of our clients better, how we use data to make our services stronger, make lives easier for our teams and our colleagues, is something that companies all over are very focused on. And so I've kind of shifted gears, and because I have been doing and been exposed to a lot of work around data that's happening with our clients, it's easy for me to kind of start from there and work backwards into what kind of new things we can do. And that's where I've kind of I'm kind of joining the team that is leading the data strategy for the business going forward, and very excited about it. And yeah, we'll see what happens.
Great. I'm sure you're going to hit the ball out of the park in this role as well. So my question is, when you chose this role, or whenever you're looking to kind of commit to a new role, be it within the same organization or in a new one, do you have any criteria of considering a gender specific viewpoint to the particular role, or that is not a consideration at all?
Yeah, so the short answer is no. I don't think that there is a gender consideration. I will say that going forward, increasingly, things like flexibility at work, how the company lacks the diversity and inclusion agenda in their corporate priorities, those kind of things are actually becoming more on top of mind for people who are actually interviewing. So it's actually moved away from um, the candidate being assessed, but also kind of the candidate assessing where these things lie in terms of priority. There's so many stories, and people that I talk to, wonderful stories about starting an interview, and women are always ridden with this guilt, right, when they are going to be moms, or they're going to start a family. It's always like this guilt in your head that, oh, maybe they will discriminate against me if I talk about this. And it has happened before. I mean, in one of your own interviews, you had kind of suggested what an inappropriate question that is, basically. But it happens, as you rightly pointed out. And there are such amazing stories that are coming to front right now. I remember reading something by a Facebook recruiter, who was looking at this candidate moving over, and the candidate was really stressed and confided in her and the fact that she was pregnant, and and she would have to obviously take some time off, even if she did get the role. And the response of that recruiter was that, well, we just need to finish up the paperwork very quickly then. you know that was it. Like, it's not even a question that you have to be worried about taking up a new job before, and kind of disclose these kind of things. So those kind of things, I think, particularly from a woman's standpoint, really elevate the position of an organization, and you start seeing these companies in a different light. And I think that that's really important. But otherwise, I feel that in the spirit of promoting diversity and inclusion, it's all the more important for us to actually like not have that gender lens when we are looking at roles or evaluating roles. I must say that I really congratulate men because of their confidence in applying for roles versus women. It was a statistics that I read that women are far less, even if they, let's say, comply with 80% of the job requirements that have been posted, they'll be far less confident to actually apply for it. Whereas men, even if they have like 40% of the the requirements up their sleeves, and they'll be like, yeah, okay, I'll apply. So I would say that be conscious about your prejudice against yourselves, and don't be afraid to take a challenge, or don't be afraid to even say that I don't know this now, but I will learn it, because that's what all of us do, right? You just learn it on the job. And I think that is something that is very, very important, particularly for women, to be cognizant about.
I think that's a great point that you brought about. Self prejudice, which kind of works against women. That I think that's a very unique point, but it does exist, and I really like the way you articulated it. Okay, so our final question for you, for today, Shweta, is what would be your message to women professionals on navigating their careers successfully?
Wow, this is a very like loaded question, and I mean, I speak purely from my experience. I think there's two things that have really helped me along the way, and as I've kind of gone through my whole journey. One is that work with an open heart. I think sincerity, diligence will take you far, far ahead in terms of your success, more than talent. I think that is you have extremely talented people not with the right attitude, and you will see the difference between those people and the people with who are sincere, have the right attitude, and are willing to work in a matter of a few years. So first and foremost, work with an open heart. If it's something that you don't like, you know great, you at least know what you don't like in life. And it's important to strike that off. And I'm talking about, of course, amongst us there are those lucky ones that who are absolutely clear about what they want to do. But for the average soul like me, you kind of navigate your journey as you figure out what you want to do as you move along. And that's really the second point, is that don't don't keep hunting for passion in your job. um, don't keep insisting that you need to start with a passionate position for any role that you're doing. Instead, try and see how you can develop passion for it. So it's not something that will come on day one, but if you actually think about it, if you reflect, every role, starting from the simplest of roles right up to the leadership ones, every role has scope for creativity, every role has scope for different thinking. And people who are able to spot that will never get bored, and you will automatically find that you're passionate about those roles. I there's a like a saying within our company, and it basically is that every person has about 2 to 3 jobs in this company. And the reason why it's so funny is because not because you actually have two threes, but you have your day job, which is your normal role. But you'll see at every point somebody will have some side project running, whether it is working with a completely different team. And I'm talking about a big corporation, which is what most of us work at. If you're lucky in a startup, it's a lot more enterprising, energizing. You will always have something that you can do. But in big companies, it's very easy to lose that sense of impact that you can create. But if you keep your eyes and ears open, there's always something that needs improvement. And don't be afraid to ask for it. Go up and say, I love what you're doing in this. Can I do something? Do you have something for me? Most of the time, leaders don't have time to actually go through like a ton of people's list names and select somebody who is really fit to do that particular side project or initiative that's happening. They will basically pick up the person who they remember, right? And if you actually knock on the door enough times, you will get that opportunity. And that's your time to actually explore passion and bring passion into your work. So don't be constrained with your roles and responsibilities as it's on paper, but try and develop passion into every role that you kind of go forward. And who knows, you may discover something that you absolutely love.
Great. I think this was a very valuable session for all our viewers, especially for our female viewers. I think some of your views would be very, very useful. Thanks again, Shweta, for taking out
Thank
time.
you, Ajit. Thanks very much for inviting me. Really enjoyed it. It's the first thing that I've done this morning, so very good start to the day.
Great, great. Really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ajit. Take care. Bye.